My name is Kayla E. I'm the author of Precious Rubbish, a graphic memoir about my really bad childhood told in the form of mid-century children's comics. And I am here at Heroes Con 2025, and you are listening to 11 O'Clock Comics.
Hello folks, welcome to 11 O'Clock Comics. This is episode 1003. I'm one of your hosts, David A. Price, and with me is...
everyone's favorite emergency room doctor, a.k.a. Noah Wiley.
Oh, man. You are not. I was trying to think of the sci-fi movie again with the aliens that he was...
Falling Skies.
Well. Thank you, yes, Falling Sky. You are not. Yes. No, while you are none other than Jason Wood. Welcome. Great to see you. A little earlier than usual, but that's because I'll be seeing you tomorrow night. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, we're here to we're here back at
You're
it.
full of me in the next 2 weeks. You're full of me.
I can't wait. I cannot wait. It's right between my birthday and Christmas. I love it. This is perfect. That's right. We are, of course, here to talk about comics, bring you all the good times. This episode, as always, is brought to you by our friends at cheapgraphicnovels.com, where you can get tons of discounted books. Every week, new releases. If you place your first order, tell Max 11 O'Clock Comics sent you, and then your next order, that's when you're going to stock up big on, you're going to get free shipping on that bad boy. There's also pre-orders. I love the pre-orders because I've got, I pre-ordered the second volume of the Triangle Era when that dropped. I think I pre-ordered the Zootopia collection because that's one of my... That's pretty much... That might be the only reason we still have Disney Plus, is so my wife can every once in a while put that movie on. She's extremely giddy for the sequel coming out. But yeah, I any chance I get, I'm always checking out cheapgraphicnovels.com because I want to see what's coming out, and generally, once I see something out there, whether it's Search and Destroy, whether it's one of the Lost Marvels collections, whatever it is, I'm pre-ordering it, getting it out of the way, so this way, once I know it's coming, I'll get that email letting me know a book I ordered is on its way, and I'm so giddy. Every week, the 11 o'clockers get on the Slack, get a bunch of specials, and I save a few for this segment right here, starting with the Death of Captain Marvel Omnibus hardcover, $74.99. There's two flavors. You got a Jeff Acklin or the direct market Jim Starlin cover. Welcome to the next level of cosmic consciousness with the adventures of Captain Marvel. From Earth to the Moon, to the Watcher's homeworld, and into the Negative Zone. These galaxy-spanning stories set the tone for Marvel epics. Bonded to Rick Jones by the Negabands, Captain Marvel defends his adopted planet against the Kree and their mad quest for genetic superiority and galactic empire. Then, in a deadly plan set in motion by Thanos' death, the massive computer Isaac takes over an entire world. This once-in-a-lifetime omnibus also features massive battles with Drax the Destroyer, the bizarre Lunatic Legion, and of course, Jim Starlin's legendary graphic novel, The Death of Captain Marvel. This collects Captain Marvel numbers 34 through 62, Marvel Spotlight numbers 1 through 4, and number 8, Avengers Annual number 7, Marvel 2-in-1 Annual number 2, and Marvel Graphic Novel number 1, and material from Marvel Superheroes number 3, What If number 17, and What If... Well, the first What If number 17 is from the 1977 series, and then from the 1989 series, you also get What If number 14. DC Finest, Static, Playing with Fire trade paperback, $23.99. From awkward teenager to having electromagnetic powers, Virgil Hawkins will have anything but an ordinary life. High school student Virgil Hawkins was just like any other awkward teenager worrying about girls, looking cool and not getting bullied. When an act of desperation brought him to Paris Island on the night of an event called the Big Bang, his life afterward was anything but ordinary. After being doused in an experimental gas, Virgil soon discovered that he had electromagnetic powers, donning a sweet costume and wisecracking attitude. Like his favorite comic book characters, Virgil becomes Static, Dakota City's newest and coolest superhero, loved and respected by all. That is, if only he could tell people about his secret identity. This DC Finest contains Static's electrifying origin, plus issues from the Worlds Collide crossover, collecting Static numbers 1 through 15, Superman, the Man of Steel number 36, Superboy number 7, and Worlds Collide number 1. And finally, Moan, a Junji Ito story collection hardcover, $18.75. A dark evil lurks in the unreachable depths of a pipe, groaning out moans that echo through the house of a germaphobe mother and her daughters. Then, flowers blooming in the shape of eyeballs are only the beginning of the strange phenomena surrounding a mysterious transfer student. Could he have supernatural abilities? Also, a man in a village deep in the mountains shares memories of his wife. What happened to her after she said she would give freely of her blood? Legendary horror Junji Ito presents 6 stories that will make your blood run cold. And those are your specials for Cheap Graphic Novels this week. What was your first Marvel graphic novel, Jason?
Probably, I guess, the New Mutants.
So number 4? Okay.
Yeah, because I remember being like gobsmacked at the format of it. I can picture myself being in my LCS. Because by then I had a pull list. I don't even know if we called it a pull list back then, but they always had, comics waiting for me when I come in. And I remember seeing it on the shelf, and I think it was like $5, right? And it seemed like a crazy amount of money, and I was like, "Oh shit!" But I was, I was, God, what was I, 12 or 13? I was a paper boy. I had no obvious expenses, so I think I remember working myself up into dropping the $5 and buying it, and was fucking mesmerized. So yeah,
I loved it.
How about you?
I did have the first one. I did have Death of Captain Marvel. My first copy, though, was not a first printing. I think it was maybe a third or fourth printing. But yes, I did get the New Mutants one. I did get God Loves Man Kills. I eventually had Hooky. I didn't get that one when it first came out. But yeah, it wasn't. I
eventually bought them all. I bought them all. I remember I bought a box of them on eBay back in the day, like when eBay was, the place. I remember boxes. I got. Yeah, I had. So I feel like I've read and I know we've done a few shows over the years about these. I feel like I've read, if not all of them, the vast majority of them. Because if I was looking at the list, there'd be very few that I would have no memory of, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because some were definitely art projects. Some just seemed to be vanity projects. Some were kind of like favors for people. But I mean, they weren't. I did appreciate how, because they could have just done something completely original with different stories of just create our own stuff. But the fact that they launched a New Mutant book with the New Mutants, they told another X-Men story with God Loves. They wrote or they allowed. I mean, Starlin. It was also. It was cathartic for Starlin, from what I understand, because his father had died from cancer, so he was able to kind of work through that with the Death of Captain Marvel, and but to see, just like you said, I mean, the format alone, just larger and it's not like I mean, it's not really like it was originally a comic book and then they blew it up. It was designed for this format, and it felt different. And even if the stories did take place in continuity, it still felt like a big deal. It wasn't like just some annual or one shot. I appreciated the format. I wished it was still around. I wish you were still kind of telling stories that way, but that would kind of mean that they might. I don't want to. Well, I'm not going to start the episode off by kind of digging on Marvel, so we'll leave that alone. But yeah, we decided to, because this week it is only Wednesday, full disclosure, so I haven't had time to really read much of anything since we all left you last week. So we decided to. I asked Jason if we felt like kind of returning to the OUFL, if we wanted to play another
Oh
round
yeah.
of overrated, underrated, favorite, and least favorite. So we threw out a couple of options, and
You threw them out, but I was
I
like,
did.
sounds good. All three.
Okay.
You did.
So two creators and a team this time around. Who do you want to start with, or what do you want to start with?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's great to revisit this because we got tons of awesome feedback the first time we did it. So
Yes.
we definitely we'll keep doing it as long as y'all keep enjoying it. It's also fun because it honestly doesn't take it. I was thinking about it all day, but it's like a fun. These lists are like fun. It's not you're not sweating it. You're just kind of like
Yeah.
letting your mind pop ideas in, and then maybe over the course of the day you remember, oh, this is even better choice. But it's fun. Let's start with. Well, I will say too, and I don't know how intentional you are with these three topics, but as I was going through the process, I think they're great. Each individually were great because I think they all have had, given the expansiveness and reach of their holds in comics history, I think there are like many ways you could go for all for each of these categories. Depending on sometimes if you pick one, it could be a thing where there ain't that much depending on whether you like them or not like them, like for one
Right.
side or the other. But in this case, I think all of them, I thought literally each one, I thought, oh, there's very very good and great to these things, and there's some not so good and great, not so great to these people. I think in this team, it just was a very rich, fertile soil to plant the idea flowers in today. So
I agree with that. And I also when I was going through, because I there was one grouping that I knew pretty much immediately as soon as I wrote down. I was just like, all right, I know exactly where each one is falling, but all three items there's overlap, whether the creators have worked on.
yes, for sure.
And so I mean it was, yeah, this could have gone in many different directions, but I did have a lot of
And
fun
as
figuring out where things
yeah.
are falling.
And as we get into it too, I think some of the things that make, particularly with two creators, some of the things that make my choices for over and least versus what are my choices for under and fave, as we'll see, some of the tropes of these creators are at play for both. Like, and in some cases, the trope that they're known for works, in my opinion, and in other cases, it does not work. So, let's jump. Let's do since we have two creators in a team. Let's do creator, team, creator. So let's start with Jim Lee.
All right. Yes. First one we threw out is Jim Lee, who of course has been around for a hot minute. And
Yes,
yeah,
the current president of DC Comics.
right. And but before then, he got his feet wet with Marvel, and then eventually in 91, 92, when Jim and Todd were unhappy about seeing their drawings on T-shirts and Trapper Keepers and everything else, and not getting any money for it. Well, long story short, that's kind of how we got the birth of Image Comics. So, Jim Lee was a fun one because I knew my favorite right off the bat, and then I kind of had to work around the rest. But what is your overrated for Jim Lee?
Yeah, Jim Lee is a fascinating one, I think, as we'll get into. Overrated. My pick was the Justice League relaunch in 2011, which is Jeff Johns returning to full-time comics work because he was off doing the movies and stuff.
That was Johns, right? I thought it was Snyder for some reason.
Yeah, no, it was Johns.
Okay.
This is pre Snyder. Johns and Jim Lee relaunching as part of the new series reboot, or the new line-wide reboot, a new Justice League team, and it was definitely marketed as a tentpole, flagship book. And I say overrated because I wouldn't say it's like bad. You know, I don't think there's anything bad per se about it, but I think given the hype, given the powerhouse of that creative duo coming together, especially at that time, I think it fell largely flat, particularly in the context of 15 years later as we look back on it, right? I think that I think if you look, a lot of people love this run, especially younger listeners. Like our younger listeners are probably throwing tomatoes at their at their whatever they listen to us on. I guess laptops, whatever, or whatever they listen to us on. Because they're like, you're out of your mind. But for me, I thought the series was fine. Right? I can't say that I found it must read. I don't find most of the things that came of it sticking with me for years later, and I don't know your pick, but I will say that I think one of the most divisive Jim Lee series of all time is Hush, and I will say that for me, Hush wouldn't fit into this because I first of all I don't have the institutional history with Batman that I think the reason many people, and if I'm not mistaken, yourself, kind of don't love Hush in the way that it's beloved broadly is because it didn't really tread on new ground. For me, that was less of a concern at the time because I wasn't as beholden to all of the ground that it tread on. But whereas I can't, like when I was debating in my head which to pick, I couldn't pick Hush because for me, Hush looked fantastic, in my opinion. I think Jim Lee drew the shit out of that book, and it was like him drawing all the Batman characters and villains and heroes and stuff like it was his chance to do that, and I thought they all basically looked great, but I thought the story was pretty mid. So to me, that's not a Jim Lee thing. Like that's So whereas with Justice League, I thought it was the opposite. I thought the story was fine, but I thought that Jim's contribution was overrated because I thought that he's probably the thing that's come from that's stuck with the world is. He got a lot of press at the time for redesigning all of the members' looks, and that included a new and working Cyborg into the team and giving him a whole new look. Superman and Batman, you may remember, like he drew them as if they had almost like micro armor, like the suits were like almost like armor. You could see like they were like almost like battle armor, and of course Superman didn't have the tights, and Batman again looked like he was wearing armor and. Some people seemingly love the redesigns, but I thought that they were pretty corny and got away from what made a lot of those characters classic. And so that's why, to me, his contribution to Justice League is overrated.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not. You're not going to get any argument from me there. The relaunch, the new 52 Justice League, pretty much was a non-starter for me once they had Cyborg as a member of the team.
Yeah. I know you never got. Yeah,
it's a complete. It's totally a me thing. The
cover solicited you in.
He's a Teen Titan. It's just, I mean, you've got it's not. There's plenty of other characters you could put in if you were trying to show your diversity and so it's not that's not it for me. It's just it's the same thing with like Wolverine or Spider-Man in the Avengers. It's like they're just I get it, they exist, they're there, I can't fight that, but it's just it doesn't really feel right with me. But
both wrong takes, but I still love you.
It's fine. Like I said, everybody's flawed. So we I as far as Hush, I don't. I think of the three of us, I probably like it the most. Not that I love it. Not that I'm getting Hush tattooed on my back, but I don't hate the run. I don't hate that series. I haven't read the sequel. I have no idea what the hell's going on in Hush 2. But part of the reason why I do appreciate Hush is the reveal of who was kind of pulling the strings, because he is my favorite Batman rogue. So I was happy to see.
Interesting.
And I think, I mean, and it's I'm a mark for that character. So the fact that
I did not know that. I
Oh,
love how you're trying to dance around it. It does. It's not. A
I am.
spoiler,
It's
dude.
it's
Came
yeah.
out
It's
fucking
like it's
20
almost like a
years ago.
25-year-old. Yeah. So it's especially since they just released yet another version of it. But yes,
Oh.
the person kind of pulling the strings was the Riddler, and I am a massive whether it's Frank Gorshin from the Campy TV show, whether he's sitting there in his little bowler hat, whether he's wearing the whole unitard with all the question marks around it, and especially if Don Newton's drawing the character. But I absolutely love the Riddler. He is hands down my favorite rogue. So yeah, it was nice to see that. I might not, I'm not really keen on, branding your question mark, branding your brand on your face or anything like that, but it's edgy. Anyway, for my overrated, and it was because I didn't want to double up because of, we've got a dozen here to get through, but, my overrated is the adjectiveless X-Men. And not because I don't like it, but as Brian alluded to last week, images from those from the 5-part cover, images from that run period, like you could not escape an X-Men drawn by Jim Lee based on anything from that series. And I really, really enjoyed his Uncanny X-Men run. I don't know what it is about that. Everything just looks sharp. It looks amazing when he and Scott Williams are working together, and it's a beautiful thing.
I mean, they work together in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm not saying that
Okay.
he didn't. They didn't necessarily like lose a step moving to launching a new number one, but I just it was the start of being way too much for me. I was just like, my man, obviously he can draw the hell out of a bunch of things. So sure, put him on whatever you can. And the X-Men books were selling like hotcakes, and Marvel knew it. And they're like, well, we're coming out with a new volume. And whether it was the whole blue gold era, or whether it was like splitting up I don't know necessarily why it annoyed me at the time. I remember buying from American Entertainment. I bought that. I bought X-Force, and so I got all the covers, and it just felt like it was so much. So for me, if I have to look at something that Jim Lee over the years, because I went through a lot of pages to see, exactly where, because I even thought about, the Heroes Reborn stuff, but he was mostly a writer with that because Wills drew the Iron Man stuff. And I think, I don't know if it was Trevor Scott, somebody else was drawing the Fantastic Four, but yeah, it was just everything that I was trying to find. Plus I didn't read everything he did. I didn't read Divine Right. There were some things that I just didn't read that Lee had done, so it wasn't fair to put it on a list if I didn't read it. So yeah, if I'm looking at everything that Jim Lee has done that I've read, I think of everything, the thing that I would find that I would consider overrated would be, and I, Vander can curse me out later, but that's now these are all subjective, but yeah, it's not uncanny. I loved Uncanny. But the adjectiveless one, I don't know. I just felt that it was it was a lot. It was too much too fast. But that's what I would consider overrated. My underrated though is a fun
I got you.
I think.
I got you. All right. Yeah. I mean that's fair. I see where you're coming from on that. Underrated for me is Jim Lee's business acumen.
Okay.
I don't think the average person when they hear Jim Lee gives the man the propers he deserves for being a fucking super savvy business person. He has basically made, and I'm sure he would probably say it's as much luck as science, but he has made the right decision nearly every step of his life. Gets started in comics, breaks big, like you said, almost immediately, a wonderkind, right? But he negotiates co-lead and co-writing of Adjectiveless at 26 years old.
Jesus.
With fucking Chris Claremont. Like, and listen, as we joke, I hosted a panel with Chris Claremont as he was eating a sandwich, and dude was still bitter about the way all that went down 35 years later. Gets to be gets his own spin-off book, as the head, and basically won that battle with Claremont. Claremont walked away, and he didn't, right? Like, he won that battle in as much as it was. Then, as he's literally making in his 20s 7 figures doing comics at Marvel, he decides to leave and go to Image and create Image. And we have discussed the Image revolution many times over the years, but for those that don't remember the nuances, if you go back and revisit all that, everybody involved, including Mr. Ego himself, Mr. Liefeld, and Eric, and everybody, they will all tell you that as they look back upon it, it was Jim's decision to come along with them that made it all work. He was the guy at the time. And now, again, this isn't a discussion of who's your favorite or who is like, in that moment, they all themselves, Todd, Will, they all agree that Jim was the one that made all this happen because he was the one Marvel didn't want to lose. So he leaves and does that, right? Then, while he's there, and I don't think things did. We all know things didn't go perfectly at Image for any of these guys, at least at the outset. But he creates they all had their own imprints. Of course, his imprint was Wildstorm. And again, you and I'm preaching to the choir here. We have talked about Wildstorm many times years, but Wildstorm was a fucking incredible, both commercial and creative success from my vantage. Think of the things that came out of Wildstorm, right? Stormwatch, The Authority, Planetary, Gen 13, Wildcats, fucking Ex Machina, BKV, right? Astro City, Kurt Busiek. I mean, like some of the very best things that weren't part of the DC universe that then were pulled back in all came out of Wildstorm. Again, he created and ran that. Then, what does he do? He sees the writing on the wall and he sells Wildstorm to DC for a goddamn mint, right? Then what does he do? He fucking goes back to Marvel for Heroes Reborn, which again, I think Heroes. I don't want to relitigate this. The Heroes Reborn was a disaster, but he got paid. Those guys got he and Rob. They got paid a fortune by Marvel, who was super desperate to go back and do that. And then the amazing thing about all these things, a lot of these things kind of ended spectacularly badly, but Jim always found a way to come out like smelling like roses. Like he never made enemies. Like almost all of his co-founders at Image either just are sole operators now, like Eric and Silvestri and Todd, kind of just did their own thing forever. Rob is just a maverick, but Jim managed to deftly navigate in and out of corporate comics with ease, never burning bridges. And then, of course, fast forward through all this, and where has he been the last 15 years now? First co-publisher at DC, then he outlasted Dio, stays publisher, and now he is the president of DC. And it's just remarkable. I mean, it's really remarkable. The guy is a gajillionaire. And he still does draw. He's still basically beloved by his industry peers and the fans. It's no small feat. We both smoke up our boy Scotty's ass for having an internal ability to really get the comics, the business side of comics. I mean, Jim Lee's out on steroids. Jim Lee has understood the business of comics in a way that I'm not sure anyone else in his contemporary group can say. So that's my underrated.
I love it. I think, he pretty much like Ringo. I've never heard anything. I've never seen anything written. I've never heard anything said negatively.
Yep. The only thing you ever see people online say bad about him is that they think his style is stiff, right? Like that's
right. Or I can't afford his commissions. But yeah.
Right. Or his commissions are expensive. Yeah. I mean that exactly. That is quite a career to have. That those would be the lights on your 40-year career.
Damn. My underrated isn't anything that serious. As serious as that. It's but it's something that it's one of my favorite single issues and
a single issue, interesting.
Yeah, it's one single issue, and for there was 1 month. Well, we're talking about Image, so it may have lasted longer than a month, or they might not have all done it during the same month. But the Image founders, they all they were all swapping. They all swapped books for 1 month for that issue. Whether it was I think Eric might have done Savage, may have done not Shadowhawk, maybe he did Spawn, but Jim Lee did Savage Dragon number 13, and that is one of my favorite Savage Dragon issues. And I'm pretty. I don't want to say it's probably one of Eric's least favorite issues, but Eric did go back and do his own issue 13.
He did.
So the Jim Lee one is probably not in continuity. I thought it looked great. I really liked his version of Dragon. The cover is just, it's Dragon in his, and it's the older Dragon because it's from the original run. So it's not his son, it's not Malcolm, but so you've got so he's just, he's in his uniform, he's in his police blues, and like I think he's in the sewer with his flashlight out, and Alex is of course there as and Jim drew a great Alex, but yeah, I enjoyed that issue. I don't know, I mean, if you're a Jim Lee completist, I'm sure you have it in your collection, but if you're not familiar, anybody currently listening to this, and even if you're a Jim Lee completist or you're a Savage Dragon completist and you don't have this issue, it's easy enough to find. I've seen it in back issue bins from time to time. I've bought it anywhere from $0.25 to I don't think I've paid $1 for it, but yeah, I've had it a couple times over the years. It's a fun little issue, but yeah, that's just something that I don't think gets talked about enough, and I can talk about it tonight since Vince isn't here to gatekeep Savage Dragon.
Yeah, I'm sure you're in the same boat, because this is the second time we've done this without our boy. I every time I'm doing a category, I think what his reactions would be to our choices. He would be groaning a lot. He would be groaning a lot. This is really a better non-Vince. The OUFL may get retired if Vince gets back, because he will hate it. He will find our groan worthy.
Oh man.
All right, favorite Jim Lee. This is where we're gonna have to part ways because you're nuts. Because my favorite is Adjectiveless X-Men.
Nice.
It's not even close.
Okay.
Listen, I can't disagree with anything you're saying. It was overwhelming, but I will tell you that one of the fun things about doing this exercise is that much of why you think it's overrated is why it's my favorite. Because remember, I was in high school at the time. I was a complete Marvel zombie, as you know, from the first decade of my comics reading. I literally read all Marvel. I read every Marvel comic, and I read nothing else. And then that changed with Image. I started reading some Image comics, but still, I didn't read a DC comic until I was like 20 years into being a fan. It came out when I was in high school. It was far enough along in my comics fandom that I had like a ton of history with all of these characters, right? So I cared. But it was early enough in my journey that the gimmickry of the whole thing was lost on me. Like, it felt revelatory, like I didn't see the 5 covers and the number 1. We take those kinds of things for granted now. We're so jaded because Marvel and DC do it all the time. But back then it felt super freaking cool, right? Like, this long-running cornerstone title of my life was getting a new launch with just X-Men, and a new number 1 with 5 covers. And again, I can look back on it now and realize it was a giant, highly successful gimmick to boost sales and popularity. And there was a big corporate profit motive behind it. But again, high school me just saw the cool parts of it. I thought the idea of 5 connecting covers was fucking the coolest thing ever. The fact that it was and is the highest selling single issue of all time, X-Men number 1, 8 million copies. Although I didn't make a dime off that, I felt like, I'm sure many fans, I was part of that success. I felt like, yeah, we did it. Again, I don't know what the fuck we did other than give them our money, but at the time I felt like, yeah, we did it. Like, we made history. I thought the book just felt big. It was big. It looked big. It read big. I just ate it up like a cheesesteak. I just lapped every smidge of the moment up. And I loved, much as I didn't like Jim Lee's like costume redesigns in Justice League, I loved the costumes. I loved the matching costumes. He created Omega Red and Maverick, two characters I think are great, both visually. I just was all about that, man. Like X-Men was my stilo. I was so into it, and actually pretty fucking bummed when he left. When he and Rob left Marvel, I was pretty bummed at first. Even though I did follow them to Image, but I was pretty bummed because at the time those guys were it. I mean, when they were the reasons I was going to the shop and the things they were the creators I was most excited to see what was next. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, after so Claremont leaves after 3 issues, then Byrne comes on to co-plot, and then he doesn't last long. And then again, shortly after that, that's when Jim leaves, and we get Scott Lobdell and Fabian and Kubert and
less said about that the better. I mean,
yes, we'll focus on the positive. My favorite was I can't putting myself back at that age at that time when the series was introduced and launched and it was everywhere. I was. You could not be a Marvel fan. I don't want to say a comic book fan, but you could not be a Marvel fan and not get caught up in that madness of just X-Men everywhere. And you knew, and it made sense. It just, I mean, you had X-Men has had some great artists over the years, no doubt, but it just, Marvel was just, they knew what they were doing. It's like we have the hottest, if not one of the hottest artists working today on a mutant book. We're gonna create a new book for this dude, and it was one of the smartest, and obviously, and then we get, of course, Adjective Spider-Man for Todd, and less said about that, because even after all this time, I don't think Todd's still that great of a writer, but Torment was not it.
Never was.
But no, X-Men was, I too was part of it. I bought all the issues. I bought the individual issues, and I bought cover E with the huge gatefold. It was, you couldn't.
What's interesting, dude, is it really is the poison roots of the tree, right? Like much like we talk about, the death of Superman being, causing the crash. Like in many ways, that event, which again is still the biggest selling comic of all time, 8 million copies, we can trace that back. That's like patient zero to a lot of what kills us about the current market, right? Like that the big two essentially keep themselves afloat through variant covers. And again, I don't know who buys them, but a lot of people buy them, right? And it's a big deal. They keep themselves afloat with renumbering constantly. They're overused tropes that they do again and again and again. And I think with less success in sustaining excitement with each successive attempt, but they still do it. And I think they're stuck in a loop now where they'll never stop doing it. And I realize, of course, that comics historians would argue that X-Men #1 wasn't, the first quote-unquote variant cover or the first renumbering gimmick. I understand that. But in terms of the magnitude of the success of it, I think it is very much the thing, much like Crisis, Crisis in and of itself is just an event, but like that, we can point to Crisis and saying the crossover and what it meant, and then we can point to Secret Wars and saying the event and what it meant. And I think the same thing with X-Men #1. You can point to X-Men and saying, like, the industry learned lessons from that success that it has been chasing for 30 years since, and it's plays a big role in where the industry is now, and that's an unfortunate thing. But in the moment, it was all of it. It was everything for me.
It was. It really was. My favorite was I knew exactly, as soon as I said Jim Lee, I knew exactly what my favorite is. This series, I could not wait for the next issue. I knew when it was coming out, and I had to get to the shop to get it. It's pretty much the second thing Jim did for Marvel, and it is Punisher War Journal, and it is
interesting. Wow,
it is. I absolutely love this series. It's close to it. I say it a lot where I'll compare a series to what came before, and this is something similar to that. I mean, Carl Potts was the writer. He did the layouts because Jim was still Jim pretty much like a handful of issues of Alpha Flight and then this. So there was, but this was the second ongoing Punisher book because you had Mike Barron writing the ongoing, the main Punisher book that Klaus had started drawing at the start, following the Mike Zeck drawn miniseries. But Punisher War Journal was I'm pretty sure it did not have the comics code. It was a direct market, so it was a little edgier than the main ongoing. You did get there was a two-parter with Wolverine. There was a Spider-Man guest star, but for the most part, yeah, it was and Elliot R. Brown was involved because of the weapons and so for all the tactical gear. But I enjoyed the series a lot. It was my favorite Punisher series at the time, and it's still I still think about it from time to time. I don't know. Don't think I have any of the issues currently, but yeah, it's something I'm on. I'll look for from time to time if I see it, but I don't go out of my way for it. But it's just, I mean, for all I know, it could be rose-colored glasses. If I read a couple of issues now, I'll probably be like, "What the fuck?" But I remember certain panels. I remember a lot from that run, and it is it's super young Jim Lee. So if you've read Hush, if you read Justice League, if you read Adjectiveless X-Men, the bones are there, but it's not the fully flourished, finished, professional Jim Lee that we know and love today. It's not the guy doing sketches at Lake Como. This is it's young Jim, and it's it might appear rough in spots, but he was still learning at the time, and I don't even think Williams was inking him back then. But yeah, it's a favorite because it's near and dear to me. It's one of those things that I'll read. I can read a bunch of things from Jim these days, but yeah, nothing's going to hit me the way that Punisher War Journal series will.
Respect. Unexpected answer, but I respect it.
Love it.
My least favorite. This was easy. This was of the four, probably. This was the. I guess. X-Men was probably. But this was easy for me too. It was the first thing I thought of, and I nothing of all the other things I kept throwing out there in my mind to think about replacing it with. I kept going back to this, and that is Heroes.
Okay.
And I will say that Jim is only a small piece of that puzzle, but for the listeners out there that aren't clear what we mean, Marvel was at a financial and creative nadir, and they came to a decision of, here's what we'll do. We will reboot everything. We'll start fresh, start new continuity, everything. And to do that, we will get our best creators to come back, quote unquote, in quotes, and those were the Image founders. And the idea was to get Jim and Rob and others back to relaunch all the key characters and start anew. Needless to say, it was a grand failed experiment. It was not well received. They ended up then doing a reboot of the reboot and a soft reboot at that. And then, of course, we've talked about how then you had another dark period, and then you had Marvel Knights, which really saved everything because of a completely different take, and then we were off to the races. But I thought that Jim, and you mentioned Jim on Heroes of Fantastic Four. So Jim and Brandon Choi, his longtime buddy and co-writer. Brandon was a co-founder of Wildstorm and the quote-unquote writer of many of Jim's Image books. They were co-writers on the series. Jim was the artist, and Scott Williams was the inker for the first 7 issues, and then Brett Booth becomes the artist for the remainder of the run. I thought it was a terrible. The concept was terrible. I think it was poorly executed. I didn't think it looked particularly great. I didn't think Jim's visual style worked too well with characters that I think Jim is great drawing really, really super muscular and fit beings. I think that's when he's at his best. I think when he has to draw things that aren't perfect physical specimens of the human form, it's less exciting and looks stiffer. I think that's the case with this. I didn't love his read. I didn't love his thing. And I thought the stories were very, very, very bang on average, mid, and felt like sort of an absolute, a shadow of the Jack and Kirby creativity that got it all started. So the first family getting rebooted in that way felt very offensive to me. So very easily my least favorite Jim Lee.
I can appreciate that. It lasted a year, and Franklin brings everybody back. And what I do appreciate about Heroes Reborn is that we do get Heroes Return, and those early issues of Fantastic Four by Claremont and Davis, and then early, well, I'd say better. I don't want to say good, but better LaRocca. I wasn't paying much attention to Heroes Reborn. It was right at that cusp where I was kind of out of it. I was aware of it because of things like Wizard and Comics Buyer's Guide, but I didn't buy any of the issues. I was probably at the time. I mean, funds would definitely play a part, but I probably justified it by saying, "Oh, well, they left and they went to Image, and how dare they come back to Marvel after what they said and what Marvel did? So therefore, I'm not. At a protest, I'm not buying." But yeah, no, it was. But visually, as cool as Wilson's Iron Man looked with everything sticking out of his back, I was just like, it doesn't really feel right. But then I was sure as hell back for Heroes Return, because like I said with Fantastic Four, but then we got Busiek and Perez on Avengers, and that was a phenomenal run. So I understand why Marvel did it, and of course for Jim and for Wildstorm and Extreme to get a paycheck, that's great. But what my favorite thing about Heroes Reborn is that we got Heroes Return out of it. So sure, at least there's that. My least favorite is when I felt that that Jim was trying to do his impression of Frank Miller and gave us Deathblow. I was just not a fan of the character. I wasn't a fan of the look because it was mostly black and white. It was very much it looked like it could have taken place in Sin City. He was doing the heavy blacks. It was just there was a lot of negative space. Your mind was meant to kind of like fill in some pieces. When I was going through the list, I was surprised that it lasted for as many issues as it did. But yeah, I wasn't feeling Deathblow, not because I just didn't love the character, and I really don't, but I didn't love the look that Jim was going with at that time for this particular series. So that's absolutely my. I could have. Part of me wanted to do All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder, but I never finished it, so I didn't feel it was fair. So, but yeah, I mean, Deathblow from jump, just from Darker Image and just the promo images, and after reading the first couple of issues, I was just like, yeah, this ain't. This isn't why I like Jim Lee. So it is of everything that Jim's done. That's pretty much got to be. Yeah,
that's fair. All right, so before we move on to the next topic, I have to ask, based on your answers to all four quadrants, I have to ask you, do you think Jim Lee et al. Is overrated? Because you picked some very deep cuts for your things you liked, and so I'm thinking if you had to pick a single issue and a very, very early career Marvel, B or C list title as your favorites, do you think in general that Jim Lee is overrated? Because I think most people would consider him a Mount Rushmore-esque creator of the last 20 years.
I do not think he's overrated. I can understand why some people would. And and whether that's jealousy or they think he doesn't deserve some things.
Man,
but no,
fighting words from Mario. Mario thinks he's overrated. I don't know if he's jealous.
no, I know he does, but Mario also doesn't care for Byrne or Perez. So
That's
we
fair,
can there I love Mario. And obviously, because we'll be sharing a room with him next weekend. But there are definitely there are definitely times where we part ways when it comes to this meeting.
He's an edgelord. He's an edgelord
together, for sure. Yeah, But no, like I said, I can understand why people would feel that way. But no, I think I don't. And we've had a discussion, the general we've whether it's on the Slack or the old forums where people kind of misconstrue what overrated and underrated actually means, whether they just mean underappreciated or just talked about too much. But no, I think
he's fairly rated. To answer my own question, I think he's fairly rated. I think he is
he
absolute
deserves
great,
what he's gotten,
and he's a great. And I think it's okay to say any great art style isn't necessarily your favorite. I don't think that should mean you think he's overrated, and that's where I'm with that. Do I think Jim Lee's drawing style is my favorite, particularly because I maybe again in the 2000s, in the 90s it was no, it's not, but do I think he's an incredibly talented illustrator who is beloved by many and whose art is sought after, and again, he's had a storied, successful career where he's made generational wealth, and as we'd already talked about, seemingly did it without ever pissing anybody off of any consequence. I think that makes him. I think that makes it okay to say I think it is not unreasonable, objectively, to say he is a great. Again, that doesn't mean he has to be my favorite. It means that I recognize him for what he is, and I think he's fairly rated. Yeah,
he draws amazing covers. He does some fantastic images. I mean, you've got whether it's that cover for the first issue of the Hush Run or Superman for Tomorrow. He does some great images.
A Jim Lee Domino. I would die to have a Jim Lee Domino. It's never going to happen because my wife would divorce me for having to spend $20,000 for a single drawing, but I would in some parallel universe I would love. I mean, so he's definitely someone, like you said. I think his ability to render a single being is phenomenal.
Have you?
Is he my favorite sequential storyteller? No,
he's not. Yeah, no. No, it's which I mean, and Eric, there are artists who are just who do great no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to run down any names, but there are artists that we think that is a phenomenal image. I love that image. That looks great. Yep. But if they were to tell a sequential story going over a couple of pages, it's like a bunch of model sheets just strung together. Mm-hmm. So no, there are. Yeah, I think. Have you ever? Have you crunched the numbers to see? I mean, I haven't even looked on CAF to see how many people have Jim Lee pieces. But have you, like you did with unloading some pages, some pieces, so you could get the Domino from X-Force from Rob, or was it New Mutants? But when you got that, have you ever thought about doing that for a Jim Lee piece?
No, because again, I would never do that for a commission. I would as much as I'm obviously a commission collector. But I would never, well, never say never, I guess. But I can't imagine ever spending 5 figures for a commission. Right. I mean, the Rob pieces. I did what I did then because, to my mind, and I stand by this, I think that is the single greatest Domino splash page, published splash page by Rob Liefeld, who's obviously the creator. So to me, that's a one-of-one grail that will sustain, if not increase in value, regardless of how long I possess it. I think if you spend $20,000 on a Jim Lee Domino drawing, it's worth a fraction of that the minute it comes into my house.
Sure.
I don't think you could. You could sell a Jim Lee commission for a lot of money. I don't think you would be able to sell many Jim Lee commissions for what you pay for them, unless it's a character that is evergreen like Batman, or if that, then sure. But for who I would want to get a commission from, no, it would be just bad business. It would have to be like with all my commissions. It has to, every time I buy a commission, I assume it's worthless, right? So it's like I just am happy to have it.
Right.
Obviously, they're not all worthless, but Anywho, there's our Jim Lee. Let's move on to our team. Your team choice was the Justice League of America,
League
aka
of America. Yeah.
And I'm up for overrated, and it's gonna be quick because I know we went long on the Jim Lee. We're gonna go quicker here because my overrated Justice League of America is the same choice as my Jim Lee overrated. It is the 2011 Justice League relaunch, New 52. I already talked about why. So to me, the characters are paper thin archetypes. It's a hollow series. It felt like a constructed editorial construct of bringing all these characters back to the forefront, and I consider myself a massive Jeff Johns fan, and honestly, I credit Jeff Johns as being he is the most important creator in my life for bringing me into DC. If it wasn't for Johns he was the top writer at DC when I got into it, and I went to Midtown Comics and bought dozens of trade paperbacks of DC catching up on the years before, and if it weren't for Jeff Johns doing all that, I would not be a DC reader all these many years since. And so it hurts my heart to say it, but I think that series was a shell of what it was purported to be. So it's my same answer.
I can appreciate that. My overrated is one that, well, I don't know how many people agree. No one's going to agree with this, but my overrated is when we stopped having a Justice League of America series, and DC got Grant Morrison to just do a JLA series. It was a Grant Morrison penned, Howard Porter penciled JLA. I was not a fan of the team. I was not a fan of the stories. I think Underworld Unleashed happened during this run. There's a two-parter that I did enjoy, where it was the one dude who basically had all the powers, or knew he wasn't the Taskmaster, but he knew how to circumvent all the League members' abilities, and he it was actually during not a membership drive, but it was like bring a new hero to work day or something like that, and they brought him up to the Watchtower, and he ended up taking out everybody. But overall, I wasn't keen on this particular run. I don't know if it was just trying to be clever or edgy, or just it was the style at the time, the type of stories that were told. It wasn't necessarily a dislike for anything Morrison, but it was just I just wasn't feeling this team. Justice League of America is a team, is a concept that that is synonymous with DC to me, and there are unrealistic, obviously, but there are certain standards I have, and the Morrison JLA didn't scratch that itch. So and because it was Morrison, and because he's telling stories with who were supposed to be DC's most powerful heroes, just the whole idea behind it just screamed overrated, and so that's what I'm going to stand by. So yeah, that's mine.
All right. Underrated. Now, I have two here because I'm going to give you what I think, I want my answer to be, but then I wasn't sure if you might be like, dude, that's not underrated. So I'm going to give you what my initial choice is, but tell me it's not fair because it's not underrated, then I will give you my secondary choice. My intended choice is Justice League the Nail.
I like that.
Because the reason I wanted to throw it out is because this may be so beloved so universally that maybe I shouldn't say that it's underrated. So again, in my vantage, I think of it as a story that is a secondary story that I don't think is on the tip of people's tongues when they talk about the Justice League history.
Sure. Yep.
And if that's fair, then I'm going to say it's my underrated because it's close to, if not my favorite Justice League story. We talked about it not too long ago, a few years ago, I guess, maybe when the collection, that new collection came out. But I know we did a whole big feature on it when a few years ago. But it's an Elseworlds tale, 3 issues, prestige format. It was written and drawn by my boo Alan Davis with Mark Farmer on inks, my favorite combo. My favorite. I love when Farmer inks Alan.
Oh yes.
It's for those that don't remember the story or aren't familiar with it. It's a butterfly effect story essentially. The nail refers to Ma and Pa Kent's pickup truck gets a flat tire from running over a nail, and that prevents them from finding and adopting Clark. Ergo, there's no Ma and Pa Kent Clark Superman in this world. And then we fast forward to what's become of the world since, as subsequent to that, and it's a much different place. It's just a much different place. And I just thought it was a very clever take on the butterfly effect, and drawn by one of my favorite superhero artists of all time. And I love it. So if that's okay, then that's my pick. I will tell you, since you're allowing it, that my backup, which is a much deeper cut, and probably a far more controversial one as a result, is Justice League Generation Lost, which actually came out just about the same time as the Justice League Johns Lee major title one.
Right, yeah.
It was Judd Winnick. I think probably the last Judd Winnick Big Two thing I remember him doing. I always thought Judd Winnick was an underappreciated writer. In fact, we've had conversations many years ago about underappreciated writers, and I think Judd was one of my picks. Keith Giffen was the first artist on the book, but it had a bunch of different artists. It was a 1 year series. It ran over 12 months, but it was 24 issues, so it ran every 2 weeks so it was 24 issues in a year. It was during the Brightest Day era, and the cool thing about it was the premise was Maxwell Lord was resurrected during Blackest Night, which came before this. And he uses his powers to erase himself from existence. So the entire world forgets that he existed and all of his misdeeds. And the only people on the entire planet who remember that Maxwell Lord exists and what he did are the original Bwahaha era members of Captain Atom, Booster Gold, Fire and Ice. And they remember him. They remember Cord, etc., etc. And so the series over the 24 issues is them trying to find and stop Maxwell Lord while the rest of the world thinks they're out of their minds because they don't know who the guy is, don't understand why they're so bent out of shape about him. And Jaime Reyes joins as the Ted Cord fill-in as the new Blue Beetle. Booster Gold is the leader of the team, and he finally acts like the leader that people always thought he could be after being, pain in the ass, sort of cut up, lovable loser, self-centered prick for much of his prior existence. I just thought it was really well done. I remember really enjoying it, and I don't recall it being particularly celebrated at the time. For all I know, maybe some people dislike it. I don't know, but I enjoyed it, and so that was my deeper cut pick. But my official pick will be the Nail.
I ain't mad at either of them. I think you and I are pretty much really the only two people I know who talk about the Nail with any sort of consistency. Okay. And Generation Lost, I did not read that, but now I want to. But no, the Nail's absolutely fantastic, and I don't think enough people are aware of it. My underrated is the Detroit era. It's right before it's before Legends. It's before the Bwahaha era. It's the Detroit era is basically like the original League minus Martian Manhunter and Aquaman. Kind of they're just the League disbands, for lack of a better term, and they decide to hunker down and set up a base of operations in Detroit, Michigan. And so it's Steel, it's Aquaman as team leader, it's Martian Manhunter, it's a bunch of characters. It's Tana, it's Vixen. There's characters that kind of just they're not the big seven. They're not the heavy hitters. And you could maybe consider it kind of like a placeholder, or they're just kind of like waiting in the water until the next big thing happens, and that's when Vibe and Gypsy and everybody else comes in, and then they kind of just go in, and that leads into the Waha stuff. But yeah, the Detroit era. So we're talking about issues 230 something like that. So before the series ends, but really sharp looking, clean art by Chuck Patton. Not all the stories were anything really to write home about. They were more kind of like street level stuff. But yeah, it's a I think the DC Finest books are putting some of these stories out now. But for the most part, the Detroit era just kind of exists between big events, between Crisis and Legends until other things can happen. But yeah, it's not necessarily a run that people are clamoring for unless you are looking for to fill any holes in your Aquaman collection. But for the most part, it's not a sought after run, but it does exist, and I was buying it off the shelf at the time. So it does exist, and I mean I have issues. There was the first it starts off with an annual, and then instead of the 4 covers going horizontally, the 4 covers are 2 and 2, so 2 on top and 2 on the bottom, and it's the Justice League against the was it the Citadel? Or was it the Cadre? Anyway, there were new villains introduced, and so the 4 covers kind of just stack up. It's 2 by 2 instead of 4 across, but yeah, I really like the Chuck Patton art, and there was a lot of drama with Steel for some reason. I think DC was trying to make him into something, but yeah, it's not. The Detroit era is not something that really gets talked about, and probably rightfully so. But for me, for my money, because I was reading it at the time, I consider it underrated.
Respect. No, I respect it. I haven't read it, so I can't. I don't really have an opinion on it one way or the other. But well, we're 2 for 2, Dap, because for the second consecutive category, your overrated is my favorite.
I love it. This is great.
Yes, so I'm going to tell everyone why I disagreed with my book on Grant Morrison's JLA. Because my favorite Justice League is, and this wasn't close. This is the first thing I filled in.
Damn, I love it.
Grant Morrison's JLA. So yes, as Dap said, it's written by Grant Morrison with art by Howard Porter. I think the art is phenomenal. I guess, but
John Dell
I loved
inks.
it.
Yes, yep.
Yes. This was launched in 1996, the year I was graduating college. And I love the history of it. Morrison, before he was Grant Morrison in Big Shiny Lights, was a huge fan of Justice League. One of his first pitches to DC back in the mid 80s was to write a Justice League book, and they said no politely at the time. So this was now he was Grant Morrison superstar, and he had a chance to kind of name his pick a spot, and he said I want to do Justice League, and they said have at it. Reasons why I liked it. It was the first time that the Big Seven were reunited in the book in decades. And as you mentioned, it's sort of the yin and yang. Like you had the Bahari, the Detroit era, you had like where there were the main iconic characters were not in Justice League, or at least not all together. This was Grant bringing them back together for the first time in a generation, which I think is pretty cool. To me, and we've had many discussions over the years about Grant, but to me, Grant is always going to be super creative and layered. Like that's the way he writes, right? I think when he quote unquote fails, it's when the big ideas get in the way of telling a surface level linear story that fandom can latch onto. I think when he's at his best and is worthy of his all time great appellation, it's when he's giving you lots of layers, but also on the surface it just works as a story. And to me, I thought JLA did that. I thought that the premise for him of telling super big epic stories with these cornerstone characters was awesome, but because it's Grant, he came in with the idea that the Justice League were the pantheonic gods of the DCU, and that the Watchtower is Mount Olympus, and that's the approach. I thought that the arcs were all like, for Grant, like super straightforward and action packed. And then the other thing I remember about the series, which I really loved, was that I think because we're both big fans of team books. I think anytime there's a team book, it's difficult for the writers to give all the characters or members of a team equal billing, and in fact, some probably opt explicitly not to. There's lead members and then there's background members. I thought that Grant went out of his way to make his run on JLA extremely balanced in the way that he treated and the time he gave to every character. And so at first, he intentionally just gave us the big seven, but then he started introducing other characters, which I generally like the characters he introduced to the mix. He introduced Aztec, which was a character he had created already for DC, Big Barda and Orion, Plastic Man, Oracle and the Huntress, Zariel. And I thought that, again, he didn't just introduce them to introduce them. He introduced them, and then we got important character development arcs for each of them over his run. To me, it just never felt superfluous. Didn't feel like any of them were background filler. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it. In fact, I would say that I've been looking for Justice League to feel as epic as that ever since, honestly, in terms of the actual titular title, the main book. I think I pick up every new iteration of it. Going to make me feel like the Justice League are the most important characters in the DCU, and I don't know that any run has ever made me feel did. So it's just funny how we look at the world in different ways. And I think part of this is that I would imagine part of this is when we read it and these characters. I had very little history with the Justice League as a unit and most of the characters when I read this, so I had no preconceptions or need for, like, I didn't need him to treat these characters in a certain way. Whereas you flip over to our discussion about Jim Lee and titular adjectiveless X-Men, I had nothing but nostalgia and expectation for those characters, and so to me, I got from Jim what I wanted about those characters, because he treated them like the way I expected them to be treated. Whereas with just JLA, it sounds to me like maybe Grant was doing things with these characters that didn't work for you in your history with these characters, but I didn't have that history as a weight. So maybe that's the delta here.
Perhaps I maybe enough time has passed and I should revisit. I'll look for a collection.
Listen, it is what it is, man. If you didn't like it,
no, I know, but again, though, it like you said, it was 96.
Yeah,
it wasn't it wasn't necessarily the year of wine and roses for me. So maybe, maybe looking at it with some fresh eyes.
Yeah. I was going to say 92 to 96 is the only time in my life since I've been double digits in age, so now 40 years, that I wasn't buying comics, right? I was in college, so I was the only 4 years of my life buy and read comics. So I came at this a couple years after the fact. I've told the story many times. I started buying comics again when I moved to Hoboken after college in 96, end of 96. Started up a pull list again, started reading, and I still wasn't really reading any DC, but that's when I started reading some DC, and then the owner of the store was like, you got to read JLA. It's like, you like Grant Morrison, right? I'm like, yeah, because I'd read the New X-Men and stuff. And he's like, oh, you got to read this. And so again, I came at it from a different time. I wasn't reading it off the stands. I wasn't reading it in the context of the continuity of the DCU writ large. It was just a standalone sort of journey for me. So that probably shapes it too. Now I will say, because I know you and I are both massive fans of the fact, it may, in fact, if we ever have a discussion of our favorite DC mainstream DC comic ever, this would be up there, if not my pick, and that's New Frontier. I didn't include it anywhere because I don't really consider it a Justice League book. I think it's more of a DCU book.
Yes.
But to anyone listening that thinks why haven't you guys at least mentioned New Frontier, don't misconstrue. I think New Frontier is, like I said, if not one of the best, it's the best DC superhero book ever. I just thought it wasn't really within the scope of this conversation.
No, yeah, I would not have. Yeah, that's on a whole other level. That gets its own pedestal. I wouldn't.
Yeah, agreed.
There, yeah, New Frontiers.
That's third Watchmen to me. Like in terms of like
Yeah.
like the stuff that DC's put out, like it's unimpeachable. I don't think. Like I will slap someone in the face if they tell me the New Frontier's not good. Like that's
100%, no doubt.
Yeah, it's just nonsense.
My favorite is this was another one that was pretty much a no brainer.
You're like the New 52 Justice League and Jeff Johns.
Bingo. No, I mean, honestly, I seriously considered the Bwahaha maybe putting that overrated just because that's what everybody talks about. But I do love what.
But again, it can't be overrated if you love it, right? Like,
no, I know. But my favorite is that early to mid '80s before Crisis, where you had art by Perez, Don Heck, or Buckler, or just and there were fun stories, and it was the original team.
I've read none of that, so I can't speak.
Yeah, I talk about issue 200 from time to time because it's kind of like not a remake or redo of the origin story, but the aliens do come back to Earth, and so the original Justice League and the newer members over the years, they all kind of like team up to each take on one of the aliens, and you get a slew of top tier creators doing each of the team ups, and there's a great team up of Batman with Green Arrow and Black Canary drawn by Brian Boland. Perez does the framework throughout the series, and I mean there's the Joe Kubert's in the book. It's a great issue, but 200 is there. But during this time frame, late 70s, mid 80s, you still have the continuation of the Justice League Justice Society team ups every summer. The stories range from wacky earthbound stories to things happening in space with aliens, and you're either on the satellite or you're down in the caves. Jerry Conway had written the bulk of these stories, and then it leads into the Justice the Detroit stuff, and then with Vibe and Gypsy and Despero kind of like dismantling the team, and then we get to Giffen and DeMatteis. But yeah, that's my sweet spot. That what you're looking for with the Morrison stuff, and to rekindle that with every iteration. That's what I look for. So when I see when I see Wade doing Justice League Unlimited, and it's the satellite or the Watchtower, and he's bringing in everybody, but you do have the original Knights at a Round Table. Like that's it. So that is that. I mean, it also kind of goes back to me Saturday mornings watching the Super Friends cartoon. Like,
for many people, that's my first experience with Justice League was that cartoon. Of course, the Super Friends.
It hits, and whether it's me showing my age or just because that's when I was buying stuff. But yeah, that's the chef's kiss for me. I love that.
Yeah, no, I respect it. Okay, least favorite. This was tricky for me because I think I don't feel like I've read enough of like the entire bibliography of the Justice League to feel like my take is like definitive on this. But I eventually got to one that I feel pretty strongly about, and that is Justice by Alex Ross and Jim Kruger. Listen, again, we've been doing this a long time, Dap. We've talked about a lot of these things conceptually over the years in different ways. We've talked about Alex Ross a lot. I think the things that Alex Ross does with a paintbrush are insanely amazing, right? They're beyond reproach. Like his ability to render these characters in a way he does is just like stunning, right? Like it's almost inhuman. I also think that he is a victim of that, in that they're so perfect and look so iconic that they lack the life and the feeling of organic motion and ethereal movement that you need to convince yourself that these still panels are a sequence of of in motion activities that fill our minds. But the reason I choose Justice here is because I think it's a great illustration, no pun intended, of Alex Ross as a guided missile, and if you give a talented pilot that missile, you can hit your target. If you let the missile operate on its own operating system, it often misses the mark. And so I can't talk about Justice without comparing it directly to Kingdom Come. And I love Kingdom Come. I think it's phenomenal. And people are saying, well, wait a minute, how could one be your least favorite? Well, the difference is Mark Waid. Alex Ross painted Kingdom Come, and Mark Waid wrote it. And of course, we've talked about this. Mark Waid is on a very, very short list of incredible superhero writers. No one that writes superhero stories has as deep a wealth of the knowledge and minutia and history of these characters. And so Mark Waid gave us these characters in a new way, but paying real homage to what made them great in 4 issues, right? In Kingdom Come. Justice was Alex and basically with Jim Kruger assisting, but I mean, effectively it was Alex writing and drawing it, writing and painting it. Was 12 fucking issues,
over Dougie Braithwaite, right?
Yeah, and it, and again, objectively, the book is I can't say it's, but that's part of the problem. Every page is so perfect; it just lacked emotion. It had no sense of core resonance. There isn't really, and also to my mind, in Justice, there really isn't a story as much as it's a series of moments and homages and images of things that meant a lot to Ross, like almost like a trip through.
It was like his love letter to Super Friends.
That's what I mean. Yeah. You got all of these things. Like he wanted to paint the Hall of Justice. He wanted to paint the Round Table. And he wanted
it's
to,
Black Vulcan.
And again, these still images are stunning, and I'd love to have one on my wall, like gorgeous. But like, I just think it came at the expense of a story, and there's a ton of expository dialogue, and it just feels like everything in the book is an idea, or like an idea of something versus like feeling like they're living, breathing entities and beings. So long-winded way of it, but to me, Justice is just like everything that's quote-unquote wrong about Alex Ross when he's wrong, and that it's just all visual without any life. And I just think it's I feel like Kingdom Come and Justice are often thrown together because the two Alex Ross DC books, and it's like, nah, dude, like one is a masterstroke because Mark Waid got to point him in the right direction, and the other is a mess. But anyway,
I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, Kingdom Come is its own thing, and I love that. But Justice, I finally did read it because I bought all 12 issues, and it took forever for me to finally just sit down and read it. So years later, I finally did. And there's some cute moments, and there's a panel that I keep in my photo album because it's when Green Arrow turns to Green Lantern and says, it's always been you, Hal, and so that's perfect. But there's a lot of it that it feels like Ross's love letter to DC, or at least these DC characters. But it's not a it's 12 issues too long. It just I was waiting for something to happen, but other than that, it is just a string of really really cool looking images. But for the most part, there's not much of a story. So I can definitely get that for least favorite. Mine is something we've talked about a couple times already tonight, and that is my least favorite is hands down, without a doubt, the New 52 version.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, there's no way.
Respect. Okay. Look at you biting your tongue all this time. Nice.
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, you mentioned during Lee. You mentioned it during the overrated stuff. So there's no. Yeah. I can't. There's really not much to add to it. I kind of said my piece with the whole cyborg thing. And there's it just even subtracting the whole reboot of this universe after post Flashpoint and trying to reset things, even though not everything was reset. And then you got that Pandora chick in the background showing up in an issue
Oh
or
yeah, I
two
forgot about
across,
Pandora.
just
Yeah,
to, like
Jesus.
as if that would tie everything together.
Yeah.
But it just, yeah, it just I wasn't and I don't know if I was feeling maybe some kind of way because of course Darkseid is the big bad of the DC universe these days, and I don't. Thinking back on it now, I don't think I thought it at the time, but like of course, obviously, with the MCU dealing with Thanos, it's like and Thanos is basically DC's Darkseid. It's just I was just there wasn't I so enjoy the concept of the Justice League, and I adore this team with my whole being, and for it to be this version of a bunch of characters that forget Cyborg, but this version of Green Lantern and this particular version of Batman and the way Superman looks, it's just it if Johns and Lee wanted to tell a Justice League story of characters that I knew, like established continuity, whether it was back in the '80s or even what Wade is doing now, that'd be fine. But just because it was supposed to be this big deal, and two of the hottest creators working for DC, and this yeah I had hope, but yeah, it wasn't meant to be. When I of all the years of all the Justice League stories, any iteration, this is my it's my least favorite, sadly, and I know no shade to anybody who dug it, who came to DC with the New 52, and this is their Justice League, and they're happy to this, but
Sure.
When I look back at everything else, if you have a favorite, you can have a least favorite, and this is without a doubt my least favorite. But now that the Justice League we're done with this, our other creator was none other than your favorite curmudgeon, Mr. John L. Byrne.
Yep. John Byrne. And let me tell you, as we'll get into here, dude, John Byrne is hard because as we're going to get into, I would argue that like a great many of the things that would be on everyone's shortlist for greatest John Byrne stuff, all definitely also had warts, and particularly I think John had as we look back on his career, he had a fairly consistent tendency to trail off. He got bored and frustrated, and it showed. I think even his great works, which we'll touch on, I think most of them, particularly when he also wrote them, didn't end great. I think they often started off super hot fire, and rarely ended super hot fire. So I think he's very complicated because I don't know how you can be a superhero comics fan of our age and not consider him pantheonic. But as we'll get into, I don't think the man had many perfect comics. I really don't.
No, yeah, sadly.
So overrated. And again, this of the three was, there were many I was debating. I was going to troll you and say the Superman, but that's an argument for other people to make. As you and Vince, for as much as you two love John Byrne Superman, as many of our boos hate it. Like that is a genuine love-hate thing. Now I have no opinion on either way. What, like a year or two ago when the omnibus came out, I finally I had no opinion on it. So that's why I didn't pick it, because it would be silly. I was just been doing it to troll you. But I do find it fascinating, and it's definitely the Byrne Superman is one of the most divisive comics of our lifetime. Like half of our friends absolutely hate it and view it as like an absolute disaster, and other half of you and Vince included, think it's like was revelatory. So it's fascinating. But anyway, my choice, and again, I think this discussion is going to have people like screaming into their phones for both of us. I bet. But my pick, Dap, for overrated is John Byrne Fantastic Four after the first year.
Oh, wow.
I think issues 232 through 244 are perfect. I think they're perfect comics, and I think when we talk about John Byrne Fantastic Four, we're pretty much talking about that. I think. You got the Terrax and the Galactus stuff, which was super hot fire. You got the Terror in the Small Town story. You got all the Negative Zone stuff. Like, it was just great. It was great. But I think that objectively, if you go back and revisit it or have a good memory for it, I think it tails off progressively from there. I think it goes from super hot fire to pretty mid and repetitive to not so great. And I think that he really started replaying the hits over and over again. We got a ton of Monsters of the Month, Villains of the Month, multiple trips to Subterranean, multiple trips to the Negative Zone. But where it falls as overrated for me is as he went along, he makes Reed Richards an asshole. A straight up asshole. He turns him into the super scientist guy who's so obsessed with science that he's a bad husband, he's a bad father, he's a bad friend. He's just completely consumed. And while that's a logical progression of the character, I don't like reading that. I don't like asshole Reed. I think that's shitty because they're the first family. And I think the first family, it's got to be corny and kitschy, and he's got to love his wife dearly, and he's got to love his friends, and he's got to love his kid. And so Reed was an asshole. He treats Sue awkwardly. There's an undercurrent of John Byrne comics, right, which we could probably get into, where many people look back on his work and think he was fairly misogynistic, right? He definitely seemingly had a tendency throughout his runs of overly sexualizing and dumbing down women. I think we see that here. Some people I think say, "Oh, but he made Sue so powerful," and he did.
And he did.
Like, again,
he turned her from Invisible Girl to Invisible Woman.
Yes, and he made her super. He to his credit, he viewed her as the most powerful of the four, and he made her that. And like, again, so I don't think it's like, that's why it's not my least favorite. Like, I love the Byrne F run. I got it off the shelves, and I hold it fondly in my mind. But if you remember too, though, but it was always like Sue's empowerment was always from the eyes of like pleasing her man. Like, I remember there was that line. In fact, I looked it up today because I wanted to make sure I got it right. Where she pulls off an amazing feat, and Reed says, "At last, my Sue finally realizes she's truly strong," as if like the affirmation of hubby. This was all about, not the fact that she's just a fucking alpha level, omega level character, in her own right. And so and then I think visually, and again, this is a recurring theme of Byrne outside of his X-Men run when he was very young still in his career. As he went along, because of the burden of having to write it too and doing other things, you start to see those classic Byrne visual trickery. You start seeing reused faces, reused panel layouts. You start seeing no backgrounds. We joke about it now, but like the Byrne no background was really sort of FF was really where we first got that a lot. Like, all of a sudden, like, panels were just a color. Like there was just characters in it with color behind them, and so I just feel like, like, I think the Byrne FF is a microcosm of his entire career, if you really want to think about it. And so, I'll take all the tomatoes to the face after this when people hear the episode. But I think FF post issue 244 to what, like 289, I think it ended.
293,
or
292.
Okay, 293. So I was off by 4. But like, I think there's good stuff in there. I'm not, again, but to me, first year perfect. Everything that came after, not perfect, and I think it's often remembered as perfect. So
we'll get more into FF later on.
Oh, did we switch roles this time? We want to switch
maybe
roles.
Maybe.
Interesting. Nice.
I can't. We'll definitely circle back to Fantastic Four.
Okay.
My overrated. This one. Yeah, when I thought of Byrne, there were a couple things that absolutely came up for a couple of the categories here, but then there were a couple that were a little bit hard to kind of pinpoint. And I mean, right off the bat, with how you explained it, with Byrne's career, or at least Byrne's body of works, it does make sense. And while I would have loved to have said, everything I've read by Byrne has always been, great from start to finish. That obviously is not the case. And when we get Byrne, of course, he writes Seed of Destruction. He helps Mignola with Hellboy, and that, of course, there's a backup for. Well, no, we end up with Dark Horse's Legends imprint, and Hellboy being part of that. Byrne's part of it was Next Men, and when it first came out, I was all in, and it was a great concept, and it was basically like, what if the X-Men were kind of like in the real world, and so Danny the speedster, he's got these massive thighs because obviously he runs everywhere, and the one dude with there's everybody who has powers, they're kind of afflicted by their powers, or at least they're not all, they kind of, you see outwardly exactly what their powers do to them. But as neat as the series was at the start, it definitely didn't maintain. And I know Byrne has tried to go back to that well. But of all the work Byrne has done, I've enjoyed what he has done for the big two. His creator-owned stuff may start off strong, but it's like you said before. It's also like that Straczynski effect where hey, great out the gate, but you can't don't expect a strong finish. And John Byrne's Next Men, for me, I would consider overrated. I was there at the start, and I was all for him, and there are times where I still consider myself a fan, as long as I don't read anything he says. But for the most part, I think, especially because this was supposed to be, his thing. And I don't know if it was supposed to be everything that he couldn't do working on other people's properties. But, looking back over the years, if I had to find something that I would consider that he did that was overrated, I'd have to give it to the Next Men.
All right, respect. Yeah, I just haven't read enough Next Men, one way or the other, to have an opinion on it.
I envy.
All right, underrated. So this one was pretty easy for me, and depending on your age, is probably how you're going to react to this. But my pick is Alpha Flight. And I say, somebody like, oh, you can't say this. It is underrated because, again, I think here's why. I would argue it's underrated now because we're an entire generation, or really two, God, like 2 generations, have no ties to it. None whatsoever. Marvel's failed miserably to resurrect interest in these characters and this team ever since. They've other than when these characters appear in other major books, like North Star, has been a long-running member of the X-Men in recent years, et cetera, et cetera. You just don't see them. The few attempts they've had to reboot the series or do miniseries have generally fallen flat and have been critical and commercial duds. The characters have just fallen out of the zeitgeist for going on 2 decades now. And so, unless you were our age reading this stuff off the shelves when it was really a keen thing that Byrne was getting a new X-Men adjacent book of his own, team book that was based in Canada where he was from, I don't think these characters mean much to you at all, unless you're our age. I just think they mean nothing to most readers. So I will say that for me, though, this is also, if I'm being fair, another illustration of kind of what we keep saying about Byrne. His run, at least the run where he's the writer artist, is 28 issues, and it's a perfect microcosm of his career, right? Like at the start, it's energetic, it's creative, engaging. But but at his ends, like by the end of his 3 year arc, it's a mess. It's a complete mess. We get the same thing there. Like in those last few issues, if you go back and look at them, and if you have the omnibus or you just have go on the app, whatever, if people are listening, you'll see like the visuals fall off. It looks rushed because it is rushed. There's like no backgrounds for pages at a time. It's just figure drawings in space, like hovering in space. It's when there's a good Byrne and a bad Byrne, the bad Byrne by the end. And if you go back, and he's freely admitted in interviews over the years, old interviews back when he was doing interviews, he admitted that he got frustrated doing the book. He didn't want to do the book. They talked him into doing the book. He thought from the start that there weren't many stories to tell, and he says that he proved himself right. And it's like, all right, well, dude, you were in control, so you proved yourself right by. I mean, it's like self-fulfilling, but okay. So like as much as I love Alpha Flight, I still get commissions of the characters. I would love to own. I would die to own an Alpha Flight page. I'm always looking for them. I think that honestly, like the first like 18 issues are amazing, and one of the cool things is that he took the personal soap operatic components of the Byrne Claremont X-Men era and brought that over. And I love that, for a guy who says there were no stories to tell, his premise I really liked at first, which was that this was a team of people who were a good team, but they really weren't tight. Like, they didn't hang out at a mansion together and buddy. They were all very different people from different cultural and economic and geographic backgrounds. And when they weren't Canada's super team fighting to save the country or the world, they were off doing their own shit. And much of the books in his arc was about that. It was 1 or 2 issues about Talisman and what's going on with Talisman, or 1 or 2 issues of Snowbird, an issue of Puck, and it was a little bit like day in the life of these characters, and then they would get back together for big fights and stuff, and I love that. I love that. It was very different at the time. It was something we didn't see very often in team books. So yeah, so I think that's my pick for underrated, and I hope it counts, because again, I know it's on a short list of things when people think of John Byrne, but I don't think it has the reverence with anyone under the age of 40. I think probably it means nothing to them.
I think you're right. I was like you were going to do with overrated. I part of me wanted to do Alpha Flight just to stick it to you, but yeah, I can't. There's I think,
well, again, it gets bad. It's bad. Like it's. Again, it doesn't end well. It's not. I mean, issues 22 through 28 are not great stuff. Yeah.
And interviews with Byrne, he has said that, listen, if Stan and Jack didn't create it, they didn't work on it, like it didn't move him. It didn't. It missed something, and so he left Alpha Flight so he could work on Hulk. So he and Mantlo and Mignola and Taluk swapped books so this way Byrne could get his Hulk fix, and even that didn't last long, as fun as it was, but it wasn't, all, yeah. And he made, he split the personality, he split the character.
Yeah, he did the split. So, great, yeah.
Drew a great version of Samson. I mean, it was fun, but it was short, and it didn't leave really a lasting mark. And then, because then we get Peter David, who takes over the character for decades. So, yeah. The Alpha Flight stuff. Everything you said, that double-sized first issue, you get the backups in the first handful of issues, because like everybody gets a character spotlight, whether it's North Star and Aurora, whether it's Marina. So I enjoyed it. And then, yeah, we get the team. And then we get, the Murderess with issue 12 when Heather walks in on Mac's countdown. So there's just, I enjoyed those early issues so much, and it was my connection to Canada, because I didn't know a whole hell of a lot about Canada. So and we get the alternate POV from that issue of Uncanny, whether it was like 123 or something, where they're all in the Canadian forest, and that's when Guardian No Vindicator No Weapon H shows up, and I like Alpha Flight a lot. I like those early issues of Alpha Flight a lot, and it's kind of synonymous. I consider Alpha Flight, I just connect it to Byrne. So no matter how many other iterations we've had over the years, even when Jim Lee drew it before it was canceled, I can't see really anybody else doing Alpha Flight. So even though we've had other versions over the years, it's just it hasn't felt the same. So I've kind of just avoided them. But my underrated, which, and I thought about a couple. Because you've got he worked on Captain America, written by Roger Stern, which probably doesn't get a whole hell of a lot of love. There's
I mean, that cover is like one of the most iconic covers.
Yes, it is.
The Black Widow Wolverine Captain America cover is
Oh, the Jim Lee Uncanny cover.
The Jim Lee cover. Yeah, we're talking about.
Yeah. But my underrated for Byrne, because they were fun for me, is his and he wasn't the writer this time. Is when he was penciling Marvel Team Up. He had a pretty good run, handful of issues on Marvel Team Up. Some of them were inked by Dave Hunt, but that was actually it's Byrne's issue of Marvel Team Up that introduced me to Captain Britain, because that was his first American comics appearance, and he meets Peter Parker, and I remember Brian Braddock sticking his hand out saying hello, but it was spelled HULLO because he's a Brit, and I was like, oh wow, he said hello. So I'm trying to do the accent and everything, but yeah, so that was and unfortunately, Captain Britain showing up in America in an American comic for the first time, and he has to go up against Arcade, but whatever. There were a lot, and you also had I think it was the Living Monolith. There was a lot of fun issues. He got to draw Spider-Man. I like John Byrne Spidey, at least the pre-McFarlane version of Spidey that Romita Sr. and Romita Jr. were drawing back in the day. But yeah, Marvel Team Up. I mean, I love Marvel Team Up, the series, period. And there aren't too many like eras. Like, I know Greg LaRocque had a good run drawing a bunch of issues, but for the most part, like, it felt like some of the Marvel Team Up issues were just not necessarily inventory or filler issues, but if Sal Buscema had, a couple hours free, then, they had him draw an issue of, Mr. Fantastic teams up with Spider-Man. So but Byrne stuff was fun, and it's definitely not, I don't think, when you think about Byrne's career, I don't know if Marvel Team Up is on the lips of too many people who were even reading comics at that time may not consider it all that often. But yeah, it's definitely it exists. It's a run, but yeah, it's not something that gets talked about all that often.
That's a great pick, because honestly, to your point, I didn't even consider it all day. I never even came to my mind of something to consider. So it perfectly illustrates your point.
Boom.
Okay, so favorite. Listen, I mean, sometimes chalk is chalk for a reason. Uncanny. I mean, I can go back now and tell you that Uncanny is wordy and expository, and a 20-year-old probably would see our collective admiration for Byrne Claremont X-Men and think like, really? But that's more to me about Claremont's writing hasn't aged well, but the creativity of it all, the importance. I mean, we will, outside of Jack and Stan, we'll never again see a period of time where two creators created so many foundational characters that are continuing to persist and drive that universe. But most importantly, regardless of whether or not the storytelling and treatment of dialogue and exposition haven't aged into modern times well, the art has absolutely aged well. You can't be a superhero comic book art fan and look at John Byrne pages when they come up for auction and tell me that it's not some of the best art that's ever been put pencil to paper. It is incredible, and it's not just, again, because he draws great looking characters. It's just great comics storytelling. This was Byrne when he was still relatively new to the business and hungry, and was effectively an order taker, right? He wasn't writing, he was the visual voice, and it worked beautifully. He was fully focused, he was young and hungry. Every issue is just wonderfully creative, impactful layouts, just well paced. I mean, I would argue that the reason I get angry about John Byrne a lot of times in subsequent periods of his career is because of what we knew he was capable of in X-Men. And maybe that was an unsustainable creativity, because probably did work him to the bone, and maybe he was like, for my own sanity, I can't draw like that every month and every panel. But that run, and it was many years. It was like, it was a big chunk of, it was what, 4 years, 4.5 years. You got different camera angles, different perspectives. You got he played around with panel layouts, with structure, with it, just every all the tricks of the trade that we subsequently applaud when we talk about great sequential storytelling. He used them all in that book. He used splash pages really effectively at the time. I mean, now again, splash pages are kind of a trope, but back then they weren't, and he used them really effectively. And he could draw them talking at a table or playing by the pool or playing baseball. He could make that as exciting and engaging as an epic battle scene. And he drew great emotion. His faces always evoked emotion, and the fighting scenes, you felt like the action, you felt the emotion. Just perfect. I whatever else I have to say about John Byrne and his consistency or lack of consistency at different points of his career, I don't think there are many, if any, bad panels in a half of a decade run of comics that, for many of us, will always be one of the absolute touchstones that made us the comics fans that we are today. So
there's absolutely something special about Byrne's Uncanny Run, inked by Austin, and I love that pairing. I don't think, for me, it's not my favorite inker on Byrne, but I definitely respect, and for a long time, like if you had any art pairings, people would always compare it to Byrne and Austin, and
sure,
and rightfully so. And they had some really solid stories. The Dark Phoenix saga, that cover with Cyclops and Jean, or Marvel Girl, on the cover with on the moon, and I even remember I bought the Phoenix the Untold story because that was just a reprint on Baxter paper of those issues, and then there was the last page was an unpublished splash page if Jean had survived the ordeal. I remember that book so well, and there are, when people do think about uncanny artists, when people think about anybody who's worked on X-Men over the years, Byrne is always one of the top 5 artists mentioned, regardless of, even compared to today. I mean, you've got all the different iterations, whether it's Hickman's run, whether it's the Carrier run. It doesn't matter who's working on X-Men. If anybody ever talks about the greatest artists that ever worked on an X book, like, Byrne's name is always in the mix, and rightfully so. There's something special about it. So I would have bet good money that would have been your favorite pick, without a doubt. The favorite for me, after you brought up your overrated.
So we're 3 for 3. We're 3 for 3. Although we swapped this time of our overrated being the other's favorite.
No, I'm calling an audible because I'm going with my first pick. I was looking at it. I don't know if objectively is the right word. I wasn't trying to lull anyone into a false sense of security or pull an okey doke and be like, you thought it was going to be this, but it's not. For most of the day, I was like, my favorite is Fantastic Four. It's got to be, because that was the one book that I was buying off the stand every month. I mean, I was buying a bunch of Marvel books, but that was the one book I was always looking forward to. I loved Byrne. This is what I really appreciated about Byrne's Fantastic Four run is that he, the egotistical bastard that he is, he treated his version of Fantastic Four as if that was like his run started with issue 111. Like, he took over right after Stan and Jack left the book. Like, that was his Fantastic Four. He felt he was the natural successor to what Jack was doing. And regardless of the Buckler and the Perez and the Bashima issues that may have come before, it was like, They didn't exist in his mind. He was just taking over from what Stan and Jack were doing. And so that first year, you're right. I mean, it was on fire. And I mean, even 249 and 250, when the Gladiator comes down and the Shi'ar and they're all fighting him, and then they go into the microverse with the hate monger. Like, there's so much fun with Byrne stuff. And then later on we get Kristoff, and we get the Stu's miscarriage, and things are heavy at times, and then they move to Greenwich, they move to Connecticut, and it's just it becomes weird. And then Reed's father shows up, and then we get the whole Adolf Hitler thing with Fury, which is basically Byrne's swan song on the Fantastic Four before he basically goes across the street and works on Superman, which is what I've decided is my favorite.
I was going to say, before this whole evening started, if you would have told me that Superman wasn't your favorite, I'd be like, what the fucking going on here?
I was trying to I honestly was trying to just think about it from a younger standpoint. Like, what was I really excited about with Byrne? But no, it some things just, you can't fight it. And what Byrne did to, what DC allowed Byrne to do with the character, to that corner of the universe, humanizing the character, keeping his parents alive, modifying the mythos of Krypton, and just, getting rid of some of the silly Silver Age nonsensical science stuff and making it more based in reality as much as it is. And the reason why I was hesitant is that, as much as I will always love Byrne for rebooting the character, even though he laid the groundwork, the character, Superman and his supporting characters and his supporting cast and everything about the Superman world is because of Wolfman and Wheezy and Jurgens and Stern. So while Byrne was there, and we wouldn't have what we have without Byrne, Superman continued to thrive because of the Triangle Era, because of the weeklies, because of everything that the other creators added to it. And that's what I love about the Triangle Era. That's my Superman. That's what I'm always looking for. That's the high I'm chasing, is for those what those creators did to the characters, is how I feel. Yeah, no doubt about it. Byrne is the reason, but it's not like I love this character because of Byrne. It's because of everything that came after it. But yeah, no, it's if I have a favorite that Byrne did, then obviously it's what he did for Superman. That those 6 issues, that first Man of Steel series, it blew my mind. It was different because we've had so many decades of silly Superman stuff, and now post Crisis we have something that just feels different and feels new and fresh. And it's weird that a character that was 50 years old could feel fresh like that. And just little things, little tweaks, like making the shield on his chest larger, because I like Byrne says, I mean, I feel like it should be. Otherwise, I mean, no disrespect to Kurt Swan, but I mean, that Superman shield is basically a belt buckle. It's just there's little things that Byrne did.
Facts, yeah.
Because I there was an interview where Byrne said that, like, he first read when he lived in England, like, and one of his first comics that he read was a Superman comic, and he didn't even see. He was looking at the crest. He was looking at the shield on his chest, and he didn't see an S for some reason. He saw 2 yellow fishes, like, kind of passing each other, and that's what. So he saw the internal image. He didn't see the S. He just saw the inside of the shield, which is weird. And after that, when I started drawing, when I was doodling, and I was drawing the shield, I was kind of drawing it the way, like, Byrne described it, and it kind of made sense. But yeah, there's just it's as much as I would want it to be, or I would love to say it could be Fantastic Four. It's based on everything. I mean, even, yes, everything you said at the start regarding the rest of his run on that title. But as far as longevity and what I'm always talking about, what brought Vince to the character finally, like, yeah, there's no two ways about it. It's for favorite, for Byrne, for me it's Superman.
Yeah, okay. I mean, again, that makes all the sense in the world. So least favorite, this was actually pretty easy for me because I detest what I'm about to talk about.
Good, okay.
Oh, nice. Maybe it's the same one. And it's Byrne's Doom Patrol. It's a fucking abomination. It is an absolute slap in the face of Doom Patrol, and we've kind of said again, what makes Byrne great is also what makes him bad. Like Byrne, just like he did with Superman, just he decided I'm gonna take over Doom Patrol and it's gonna be my thing, and I'm gonna tear up all the continuity and give you a new take on it, and that's fucking blasphemous. I mean, he basically retconned all of Morrison's run out of existence, Jesus Christ. Which is just fucking absurd because Doom Patrol and Grant Morrison's run are synonymous. It's what makes Doom Patrol great. I don't know if you read it, but it was 18 issues, and it was everything I didn't want Doom Patrol to be. It was bland. He removed everything that made Doom Patrol interesting. That came before it. He got rid of like the quirkiness, the strange science, the golden age homages to the weird shit that happens, and the oddball patois of their interactions with each other, and just that always everything felt like it was like Doom Patrol at its best feels uncomfortable like every all times, and he got rid of entire groups of characters like they never existed. Jane, Dorothy Spinner, Danny the Street, like all gone, poof, didn't exist. He basically gave us a year and a half of like straightforward superheroic Doom Patrol, and like that's an oxymoron. Like they're like, why bother making it Doom Patrol then? Just call it like Alpha Team, like we don't. What makes Doom Patrol is that it's not your typical team. It's fucking like Addams Family meets Fantastic Four, right? It's fucking weird, and of course, and this is probably the most infamous. If whether people listening have read it or not, if you do know anything about his, that it was basically slammed shut because of a very, very odd in an arc. He has a tale where two of the main characters, Robot Man and Elastic Girl, go back in time, and when they go back in time, their modern consciousnesses are in their age-appropriate bodies from then. So, Robot Man is an adult. Elastic Girl is a 12-year-old girl. And Robot Man proceeds to profess his love for her. And they start making out. And that pretty much got the book canceled, as it should have. And to this day is one of the most like ick things ever in a mainstream comic book. Inexplicable. It's one of the things really that drove, I think, Byrne into exile too. Just completely inexplicable and inappropriate and ridiculous. And it'd be one thing if like he was just doing a crazy book and was taking chances and it was just a chance that went too far. But he was writing a boring milquetoast superhero book that was in no way an effective illustration of what made the characters great all the years before, and then he went pedophilia on us. So yeah, Byrne's Doom Patrol is a blight on comics in general, and easily the least favorite thing that I've ever read that he did. So
I am glad I avoided that. I know that they put out an omnibus not too long ago.
They did. I'm stunned by that. Actually, I was stunned that they did that, given the pedo stuff.
I wonder if Ian bought it. I gotta find out. But yeah, no, that's not okay. Oh, I'm glad I missed it. I do like the concept of Doom Patrol. I haven't read a ton of comics. I would like to read Morrison's run one of these
Grant
days.
Morrison. I mean, let's face it.
I do, yeah. But it's yeah. I would have picked that had I read it. Instead, I went with and I also thought about Byrne's Wonder Woman run, which wasn't all that great. but I did end up landing on. Oh, there was also X-Men: The Hidden Years, but I went with Spider-Man Chapter 1.
Yeah, that was. If Doom Patrol didn't exist, and my other pick was going to be John Byrne trying to draw babies, but that's.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, I mean, he had West Coast Avengers. I mean, he did write Iron Man that Paul Ryan drew, and I like that, and that could have been a runner-up and underrated, but no, Spider-Man Chapter 1. If anything, if you take one thing away from Spider-Man Chapter 1, it's that Byrne decided that Sandman and the Osborns are related because they have similar hairstyles.
Yep.
And I just, I don't, I can't. Like, why? Like, you're John Byrne. Like, you drew Phoenix and the X-Men, like, on the moon. Like, oh my God. Like, so, yeah, I mean, Byrne seems to be the epitome of don't meet your heroes. He's just, it's, I don't know if, I mean, even the Star Trek stuff he was doing for IDW, it's like, he seems to just, like, at least Alan Moore kind of like, went away from comics. He'll still talk about things from time to time, but he moved on from comics. Whereas Byrne still seems to kind of be pulled in. He won't let things go. They're doing his, they're going to be publishing his X-Men work that he was putting out on his message boards. That's similar to Claremont's X-Men Forever, where it doesn't adhere to continuity. It's just him doing his own thing. It's so weird. It's wild to me of all the comics creators, all the comics we've read over the years, but of all the comics creators that we grew up adoring and we bought the books because they were working on them, that he seems to be one of the biggest unfortunate fall from grace, that's just that's internal to me. That's not. I'm not brushing him with some. I'm not proclaiming this for all of comic fandom, but just for me, somebody who I had so high up, who now just has done so many things in his later years professionally that has. I know we talk about separating the art from the artist, but and what he's done lately doesn't taint his Fantastic Four or his Superman or his X-Men or his Alpha Flight stuff, but it's still the same person, and for that it does tarnish it just a smidge.
Well said. Well said. There you have it, folks. The definitive OUFL for Jim Lee, John Byrne, and Justice League of America.
Love it.
Nicely
this one
done.
way longer than I thought it was going to, but I ain't mad.
Nah, it ate it up, man. We gave people a good chunk of hardiness.
And so, that being said, thank you everybody for listening to us tonight, for listening to our OUFL. We will be back next week. Next week's episode probably won't be as long. Next week's on a time crunch because we do have Baltimore Comic Con. So we'll be.
But that also means bonus content.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So
we got a nice long road trip we're going to be taking. We're going to hang out with our booths. There's going to be plenty of bonus content so for people listening to this that are patrons, you will get more of us than you normally get this week. For those beloved, and we still love you, listeners of the free flagship show. Yeah, it's probably going to be a shorter episode.
But we once I find the time to, so all fair. Jason and I have to discuss when we're recording next week, and then this way I have time to put the episode out. So before we hit the road to Baltimore, it's in your ear holes. But for now, we're going to wrap this one up. Again, brought to you by cheapgraphicnovels.com. Check out the weekly specials there. You've already got next week's releases up if you want to take a look and see what you can start ordering for next Monday. Other than that, you can find us on, as Jason said, patreon.com/11o'clockcomics. We're on the socials. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you can leave us a review. In the meantime, we're going to wrap that up here in your travels. I just want to give a shout out to our good friend Chris Thompson, of course. Whether he was with Eagle Moss or Titan Comics, he is now an editor for Heavy Metal, putting out some great work. The third issue is available, and continuing. We talked about the first issue a couple months ago, and second issue, which I had recently read, continued that fun. The third issue I'm working my way through now, and it's still great stuff. I've missed Heavy Metal. It was a magazine that I was buying off the newsstand in the late '80s, and this is, and I know it's tried to come back over the years, but this 3 issues in, this one feels like the same magazine I was reading back in the day. Some of it helps because we'll get some throwbacks, whether it's some ads or images. But for the most part, the interviews, things like that, just hit me just right. So if you haven't checked it out yet, please do so in your travels. Heavy Metal Magazine.
Nice. Also, I want to mention that we mentioned these con travels. Just to be clear with everyone, we're recording this on Wednesday. Tomorrow is the start of New York Comic Con. Is the 19th New York Comic Con, I believe. It will be very different for us this year. We are going to make very little to no attendance there, at least as a collective. In part, well, mainly because we agreed really at the start of this year that we would go to Baltimore for a change, and Baltimore is the following week. So hard for your booze to do 2 full con weekends in a row. So we will be going to a wonderful group dinner that we always participate in tomorrow night, and I'm sure we'll have some nice stories on that, either on next week's episode or during our bonus drive as we're recapping, but we'll regale you with that. We've got to figure out if and how we're going to pop into the show otherwise. But yes, those that are kind of used to us doing a big New York Comic Con coverage and giving you, multi-hour debrief and anecdotes, that's not going to happen this year, unfortunately. But we'll be back. We'll be back next year for sure. But in place of that, as we've alluded, you're going to get for the first time in over a decade, you will get a very detailed and glorious recap of the Baltimore Con. Different but equally awesome. Now, in your travels, I am going to spend a bit of time talking about the end of an era and the beginning of it, and that is Transformers. At the Energon Universe Transformers Skybound. We talked about the series pretty much frequently as it's been going along. Of course, the first 24 issues, a full 2 years, written by our boo Daniel Warren Johnson, who we will in fact be having dinner with tomorrow night, as conceptual continuity has it. Well, by the time you're listening to this, we probably already, if you want to get really meta about it. But all that said, D-Dub has gotten all the flowers deservedly for this. I think it's been an absolutely incredible run, far exceeding, at least from a critical writing standpoint, what most even ardent fans of his would have expected going into this. But I have been intentionally letting the last few issues of his run stockpile because I didn't really want it to end. But then we got the announcement 2 months ago that who was going to take it over. Well, when you own Skybound and you got to replace D-Dub, what do? Well, you pretty much pick yourself, which makes sense because I think the only writer at Skybound has affiliation for, or currently has affiliation with, that would have been viewed as a suitable handoff would be Robert Kirkman himself. So issue 25, which just hit the stands, is the first issue of the Kirkman-Dan Mora era of Transformers. So now that we have issue 25 in hand, I decided it was finally time to sit down and read the final arc of D-Dub's run and then cascade right into the first issue of the Kirkman Mora era. And also shout out to Jorge Corona, who's the artist in the bulk of he's not the only artist, but he's the beginning and the he's done the most issues of Dan's Transformers work. Dan drew the first arc, and then Jorge finishes the series up. But anyway, I won't give you an issue by issue recap because it travels, but I will say I read issues 20 through 25. Issues 20 through 24 being the end of Dan's run. Awesome stuff. Again, as much as everything that we loved about the series up to that point, he sticks the landing. A very fitting conclusion to both Optimus and Megatron's arcs here as they're at war with one another. I'm going to give Dan a hug tomorrow because of his absolute masterful treatment and front and center way that he put all the different combiners. In the final arc, we get the aerial bots and Spirion showing up to help offset Devastator and Bruticus, which is just fucking music to my eyes. You've got Megatron. One of my favorite scenes is for the last bunch of issues, Starscream's been ripped in half. It's just basically his waist up. They're carrying him around, and Megatron heals him, regenerates him to completely new, pristine Starscream, only to then subsequently beat him to almost near death again. So he literally heals him so that he can, which I loved. Just so many fun moments, so many on point characters, and recall that Dan created a character. He created a bot in the series, and that Autobot plays a massive role in the conclusion of his arc, which I thought was very fitting. Just loved every bit of it. And then as to issue 25, I thought it was a very, very good handoff. It picks up literally right where Dan's run left, so like a minute later. So it's not like there's any kind of like soft reboot or resetting of things. Nice. And I will just leave you with this. This is a spoiler, so you can just turn off the pod if you don't want the spoiler, because I don't know how else to gush about this without giving you the spoiler. But when you all hear me gush about it, you'll understand why. This is like basically, I feel like Robert's writing this comic for me. G.I. Joe's been in this book because the Energon universe there's a connected universe. We know this is nothing new. It's we've had the connection through Void Rivals as well. But Dap, do you know who shows up in issue number 25?
No.
Miles fucking Mayhem.
No way.
Miles Mayhem, people. Now, people are like, some of you might be like, who's Miles Mayhem? Miles Mayhem is the lead villain of none other than my beloved Mobile Armored Strike
Holy
Command,
shit.
people, Mask. Which, just like with Void Rivals having a Transformer, we didn't know it was. This is, as far as I know, the first public acknowledgement that apparently
That's wild.
Skybound has secured the rights to fucking Mask, and it's going to be in the Energon universe.
Holy crap.
Which tells me that we're most likely very soon getting a fucking Mask comic book. And not just any corny licensed Mask comic book. A Skybound Mask comic book. I am overjoyed. I can't believe it. I'm reading the book and it's like, Optimus is like, and by the way, he's apparently a hero, at least at first. It's like, here's my guy. He's the head of this group that we're working with. And he's like, hi, I'm Miles Mayhem. I'm like, what? So I can't fucking believe it. I can't believe my Mask dudes are going to be in this crazy universe together.
Oh, imagine if the series launches in December for your birthday.
Oh my God, I can't bestow my heart. Bestow my heart. And we got the toys coming. I got the toys arriving in December as well. Oh, I'm verklempt. But yes, so in your travels, do continue to pay mind to the Energon universe. And I will say, a masterful handoff of the baton, at least as far as I can tell from the first issue. So
that's wonderful. I have issue 25 queued up. I haven't checked it out yet, but that's
sorry I spoiled it for you.
But no, again, please don't worry about it. No, it's fine. I mean,
it's.
I
like,
get the
literally,
giddiness.
it was like if this were a world as we're gonna have in 10 years where AI is like custom content for all of our brains, like this would be like I would be the only one on the planet that would actually mark out by him showing up unexpectedly. So I had to mention it because like, what percentage of people reading this book really care about Mask? I mean, not a non-zero, obviously, but it also shows me that like Robert Kirkman and I could be boos. We could be bros because he clearly must love Mask too, right? Like why else is he bringing it in? Like, it's not a It's
And
not a Hasbro
apparently
thing.
he was. No, it looks like maybe. Because let's see, from his earliest days on GI Joe Colton's Adventure Team, Miles has developed a talent for spreading. When the Transformers returned to Earth, poised to reignite the violent Civil War. This is Switchblade here. Yeah, this is. I mean, and this article was like written back in June, so it was before. But I guess there was a connection. I think in the IDW continuity, it looks like.
Oh, okay. So there you go.
Nice. Wow. All right. That's nifty. I love that. I love that for you, man, because you've got Transformers, man. Like it's all, yeah. And GI Joe, it's like better than a Reese's Pieces. That's a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. I mean, you've got everything here, man. 2025 is your year.
It's well in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. 2005 IDW he was introduced. Well, go figure. Huh? Didn't know
Damn.
that. Crazy.
Huzzah! All right. Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. Alrighty, boys and girls. Go check out Transformers number 25. And we will be back here next week to talk to you all. Have a great night.
Peace.
That's it for that one.